Hey, it's Mike from Mag Plus. In this video, I'm just going to walk you through the Mag Plus plugin, kind of tell you what all of the features and buttons do. This is the Mag Plus plugin window here. You can turn it on and off under the window menu. Just check it or uncheck it there to make it come and go. Now on the plugin itself, there's also an on-off button. So maybe you want to leave the window open, but you want to just make a quick change on a print page, go ahead and turn it off. Device is pretty straightforward, in this case just the iPad. Now the issue folder here is where you want to export to later once you're finished with this page and you want the system to gather up all your assets into a nice little bundle that'll be read by the production tool. The page ID is important. This can be anything you want it to be, but it's what the system's going to refer to when you link across pages and in the production tool itself. So give that a name you can recognize. The name is what the user will actually see if they bookmark a page within the tool, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Orientation is sort of interesting. Mag Plus by default has an automatic two-level orientation using something we call pinning. But you can also lock an orientation. So look what happens here if we lock to portrait. Now I've opened it in landscape, I get a little symbol that tells me to turn it, and when I turn it again it's just locked, it just looks sideways. Now let's see what happens when we do auto, and I'll show you the pinning, which I'll explain a little bit more later and is covered in a separate video as well. So in an automatic orientation, it works in both orientations. The elements just move according to pinning rules that I've set, so you can really lay out once and it can work in both orientations. Background is just the background color, the behind the B layer itself. Knockback is sort of an interesting effect. This is really useful when you're using two layers and you have a sort of complicated image in the background. So watch what happens as I start to scroll up this A layer. I chose white 80%, so you'll see that a ghost of white color at an 80% opacity slowly fades into view. Now that's, as I said, it's handy if you don't want the text to interfere with the image behind it. Table of contents is interesting. You'll only check this button when you're actually designing a table of contents that you want to pop down from the menu within the app itself. And let me show you one that we've already built to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So of course you can design a table of contents page, but you can also have a totally designed table of contents that's part of the menu structure, the navigation structure of the app. So this is the production tool, one I've built a little short sample issue, and let me just show you what I mean. So you can see the 3 pages that were part of this issue. That table of contents isn't one of them. Now the way I get to that table of contents is by clicking once in that upper left where that home button is blinking. You'll see this pop down window, and there's that InDesign document that I've created using the internal linking system to jump between pages. That can be any size you want it to be, that window. It doesn't have to be that full width. It can be longer or shorter as well. So it really gives you full control over what a table of contents should look like. And here under the bookmarks, you'll see that natural language name I mentioned earlier. Finally, the other thing I want to mention here is that you can tie 2 pages together and have them show up as sort of a spread within the system. And that's done with the little box at the end of the article ID name. So if that was a 1 and a 2 in the same article ID, it would tie them together in the system. Now the no A layer means you can simply turn off the A layer and just have everything move in regular screen size slides. A layer follows B layer is a little bit complicated, so I want to demonstrate how this is going to work. This has to do with one of the things the user can do in this 2-layer system, which is turn off the A layer and just scroll down through the B layer images. Do you want that A layer to follow the user even though it's not visible, or stay where it was before they turned it off? Let me show you what I mean. So here's the way the system works normally. I scroll the A layer, movement in the A layer triggers a new slide, and the B layer both are visible at once. Now if I turn that off, I scroll up. Because I've said A layer follows B layer, you'll see that that A layer shows up where it's supposed to be. It's tied together. And let me give you an example of what happens when I turn that off so you'll see the contrast here. Let me jump back out. And actually, yeah, let me turn off that knockback so it's a little bit easier to see the effect here. You can see this instant review makes it really easy to play with things like this. So now let me turn off the A layer, move up in B layer, turn it back on. You'll see that A layer didn't move at all. So this is really handy, say, in a long feature where you want somebody to turn off the text, look at all the big, beautiful images, but not lose their place in that story. Moving on, the object type has to do with the boxes you create in InDesign can be designated in the system as being several different kinds of boxes. Block is most common, that's a text box or an image box. Control image is when you're controlling a movie. HTML is for dropping an HTML element. Hotspot is a link, and media is, of course, a movie or an audio clip. Most of the time those will be set automatically by the features that are explained in other videos, how to add links in movies. Pinning is that feature that we talked about earlier, and let me just do another quick demonstration of this. This is the ability to take objects that are either on the A layer or the B pinned objects layer and have them move dynamically when somebody turns the device to a different orientation. This way you can decide what the layout looks like in both orientations without creating two completely separate layouts. It really gives you control and eases the layout burden. You see this element's on the B pin blocks layer, so that can go ahead and move. Let's see what happens now with this pinning that I've set when I jump out into the sim. So now I'll turn the device. That left object moved all the way to the left. That lower right object stayed in the lower right, and it actually stayed, if you'll notice, the relative distance from the edge that I placed it, not the absolute edge. That really gives you pretty precise control over what can happen. Snapping is the ability to make the A layer stop at a particular place on screen, and it's a little bit complicated, so I'm going to cover that in a separate video. Now let's jump into the Settings tab, and I'll just quickly walk you through this. This push device is the way that I'm doing this instant review, pushing these MIBs out to my iPad. And the IP address you see there corresponds to the IP address of the connected iPad on the same wireless network. And you can see there where to find that within the Reviewer app. Output PNG overrides the default to output JPEG images, which is what the system will naturally do. And there are 4 different quality settings for your JPEG. Downscale using Photoshop is what you probably want to use. It'll produce much higher quality than downscaling using InDesign. This setting just shows the quality of the previews you'll see in the production tool. And the Calculate Default Pinning is something you can check or uncheck, and the system will automatically figure out what edges things should pin to based on what they're nearest. Finally, let me just walk through the layers here a little bit in the InDesign template. Clickable areas is that hotspot layer that's automatically created when I create a link or a movie. Now these next 3 are just some non-printing guides that'll show you the iPad bezel in either orientation or one mask that shows you sort of what's visible in both orientations, that cross shape that you designed for. Finally, there's just the 3 content layers. The A layer, which is that top free scrolling layer, B pinned blocks for things you want in back but you want to pin, and B main content for those full screen images. That's the high level. There's a lot more videos walking through each one of these in more detail out on our site, magplus.com.